Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. I'm Jim Cardle. With the final days and last week of the 2015 legislative session upon us, prognosticators and Texans across the state are focused on not only the state budget, but in particular what type of tax cuts we can expect in the future. And State Representative Dennis Bonnen from House District 25 out of Angleton is the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. The House Ways and Means Committee and Representative Bonnen have been at the epicenter of all major activity this session, covering issues from not only tax cuts in the budget, but also border security issues. We're pleased to be able to visit today with the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Dennis Bonnen from House District 25. Chairman Bonnen, thanks for joining us again today. We appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for inviting me.
As I mentioned in the introduction, you have been arguably the most active member on all the critical issues this session, whether it be the border security effort and your HB 11 or tax and budget concerns. But let's just jump right into the tax debate if we can. I know you're in the middle of negotiations over there in the final couple days of the session over the tax cut bill. Give us an overview if you can. What is the status of the negotiations? There's property tax cuts, franchise tax cuts, sales tax, wherever you want to start. What's
Absolutely.
the latest?
Well, the latest is that we have the House has respectfully set sales tax aside. I want to have that discussion again in the future,
Okay.
but we've set that aside. We have agreed that we will do a $10,000 homestead exemption increase, but one of the sticking points that we're trying to resolve right now, and it's a little bit frustrating because it's not that we don't want that to be an immediate opportunity of lessening the pain, but our tax assessor collectors came in and testified before my committee a week ago and said, look, we have no position on this, but you need to understand that we're not sure we can have an election, a constitutional amendment election to increase that homestead exemption and then load that into our software and put that into tax bills effectively this year.
You just can't turn the Titanic on a dime.
That's exactly right. And frankly, their software systems are designed to not be prepared for that. So we're visiting with the Lieutenant Governor and the Senate about how we can make that work, because the last thing we want to do is create confusion in our taxpayers' property tax bills. So that's really the final issue that we're trying to resolve. And I'd respectfully say it's not even an issue that we're arguing or debating over disagreement of policy. It's an issue of mechanically, can we do this effectively? Because the last thing in the House that we want is to shove this forward and create a real hazard to tax bills for our taxpayers. The last thing I want is one neighbor saying, well, my bill doesn't seem right, but my neighbor's bill, he says his is okay, and the guy on down the street, his says his is messed up. We don't want to do that to our taxpayers. So that's the final sticking point on that. And one thing I want to point out on the property tax relief that's a big deal to me, and it's been the message I've been trying to deliver all session long, is that we're proud to do property tax relief, but we don't want it sold incorrectly. People get very frustrated by elected leaders who don't tell them the truth and who oversell things to them. And so the House's position has been, look, we do a $10,000 homestead exemption increase. We're proud to be a part of that. We're proud to help get that done. But what we're really talking about is probably having your tax bill not go up as much as it would have. We're talking about, instead of a $250 increase, only maybe a $210 increase. So we save you $40 that you may never really recognize, because what you know is your bill went up $210. So in the House, we want to be very clear. We're not really probably going to even be able to lower what that property tax bill is. The best way to lower your property tax bill is go talk to your city council, go talk to your county commissioner's court, go talk to your school board. They control those rates. The appraisal going up is an issue we want to address, but with that said, appraisals going up isn't the problem, because appraisals can go up and rates should go down. And so that's only controlled at that local level. And so in the House, we want to be telling the truth. We want reality as to what's going on. The other piece of the tax issue, Jim, that I'm very excited and very proud of, real quickly, on property tax, that's about $1.2 billion a biennium, $600 million a year.
Okay.
The franchise tax, I'm very proud of the work the House has done on that, and the Senate. The House has, our bill will be passing, which is a 25% across the board tax cut, and that will be real relief. The average business should save about $10,000. That's serious. So 25%, it's going 1/4 of the way towards eliminating the tax altogether, which is what the House did when we passed the bill in the House. We put on the floor that we are moving this towards elimination, and that it would automatically buy itself down if the excess revenues were there. The Senate sent it over without that, and the Senate has now taken that out again, which if that's where they want to go, we would politely disagree, but we're proud to get the 25% across the board cut done. That's the most important thing, and it will send that more clear signal out to business in Texas and around the country that Texas continues to want to be the #1 in job creation in the nation.
I know that's, you mentioned the back and forth in the negotiation. In the day and age of the Tea Party and the internet, it's often hard for, I think, a lot of Texans to realize that politics is the art of the compromise.
Correct.
And speaking of that, I know the franchise tax, you were good enough to come a month ago and visit with us when you put on the table not a 15% franchise tax cut, but a 25% franchise tax cut. You've also talked about the sales tax cut, which would have been the first in the history of the state. How hard was that for you to let go, or was it a negotiating point that the House members really want to bring back at future points? Give us the outlook there.
Jim, the issue on the sales taxes is, in my view, a great beginning position.
Okay.
We came into this session, I wasn't Chair of Ways and Means. The House effectively didn't have one because the Chair of Ways and Means had run for statewide office. So I didn't have any ideas of what taxes we would cut or what we should cut, and we had a very open process, and we brought in experts. We brought in the LBB multiple times. We brought the Comptroller's Office in multiple times. We brought in trade associations multiple times. We brought in think tanks of all different persuasions multiple times. And we just really had a sharing of ideas, a discussion of base principles. I believe that when you cut a tax, you should be growing and expanding the economy.
And we had the blessing of a surplus and a healthy economy in the first place.
That's exactly right. And you should also be shrinking government.
Okay.
Well, cutting the sales tax does both of those more effectively than anything else on the table. Now, the challenge we had, though, is that coming into session, there was great effort. Lieutenant Governor Patrick has done a wonderful job for years, campaigning hardly against the property taxes, and I really have to give him credit for that. So the momentum was there for that. There are groups out there, business organizations out there, who coming into session had said we need to reduce or eliminate the franchise tax, which obviously we agree with. And so the first time anyone even mentioned in the history of the state of Texas reducing the sales tax was probably around the 1st of March when I suggested it. So you understand this process very well, and you know that when you come into a situation where you've got 2 tax cutting opportunities with lots of momentum and lots of discussion, and one that no one's even thought of or mentioned or discussed prior in 40 plus years, 50 years, and it gets mentioned in March, the viability, I'm actually very proud of the level of success we had in the discussion of that issue. And I look forward to continuing that discussion and making sure that as we continue to prosper in Texas and we continue to have the opportunities to do tax cuts that give money back to our taxpayers, shrink the size of our government, reduce the dollars coming into the state coffers, sales tax will be in front of that discussion.
Well, you're to be commended for, first of all, taking over the chairmanship, drinking from a fire hydrant there, and raising issues. You have, if we can, switch subjects a little bit.
Absolutely.
Folks, I want to thank you again for joining us for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. You have been at the epicenter, Mr. Chairman, of another crucial issue that's at the top of virtually every poll, and that's border security and the effects of illegal immigration down on the South Texas border. Your HB 11 has been moving. It calls for additional funding, additional manpower and resources on the border. What's the latest on your conception to have some additional state engagement and relief down on the border?
We're finally getting movement in the Senate on that. Senator Birdwell is carrying the bill in the Senate and has been tremendous to work with. He's frankly, those who don't know his story need to learn it. He's an American hero. Great senator.
Was involved in the Pentagon bombing as a
He's the
enlisted man up 9/11, correct?
Where the plane flew into the Pentagon. And I apologize, Jim, I may not say it the best way. He was the closest to the impact of the plane of the only living survivor of the closest to that impact. An extraordinary story, an extraordinary person, and I feel very blessed to consider him a friend. Not just that he's one of our senators here, but he's carrying the bill over there. He's the chairman of the subcommittee on border security in the Senate, and they moved House Bill 11 out of that subcommittee to the full committee earlier this week, and hopefully it'll make good progress. But what's wonderful is that he and I have been able to work so cooperatively throughout this process and do what's right for Texas. And what's right for Texas, unfortunately, is not Texas's job. It's the job of our leaders in Washington, but the thing that I think people should be most proud of is that they live in a state where if Washington won't do their job and there's the opportunity for us to try and take up that slack, we will. We have to be careful about how and when we do it because we can't burden our budget with taking on all the major challenges that Washington seems incapable of solving. But one of the things, and border security is at the top of this list, one of the things that I hope Texans are proud of is not just the work we're doing on border security, but the more important, broader issue, which is Texas legislators come together with the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker. We come together and we solve the problems that face our state. And border security had become a huge issue for our state because we can get absolutely no help from Washington. So instead of sitting back and bemoaning that and continually sending letters and phone calls and flying political barbs at Washington, as many often do, we decided many years ago, frankly, long before this session, we would do something ourselves about it. But what we're doing this session is more significant than anything we've ever done because as we visited about before, Jim, we have had what I call fits and stops. We surge at the border, it calms down, we come back. We surge, we come back. What House Bill 11, in coordination with our budget, it will produce the opportunity for 250 additional DPS troopers who will be stationed in the border region so that it does a couple things. One, it brings those as permanently stationed. They're a part of the community. Okay. They understand the community. They desire to be in that community, and it gives us the permanency down there. We're not going away. We're staying.
And they've got some buy-in community relations.
Absolutely. And they have a better cooperative effort with all the other jurisdictions that we need to be working closely with. The other things that we're doing, though, is that we're making it clear that this is a priority of Texas. If Washington won't do it, we will do what we can. But more importantly about that 250 additional troopers is that it allows us, because in the surge we've been moving troopers from other parts of the state down there to do a better job on that border region. It eliminates our having to do that.
Okay.
And allows us the opportunity, as I like to say, yes, we'll improve the situation on the border region, but we'll also make the rest of Texas even safer. Because in fairness to our Rio Grande Valley area, the folks that are creating havoc in their communities are creating havoc in all of our communities in Texas. They are not coming through to spend time in McAllen. They're coming through to come to Houston and Dallas and Austin and Waco and out in Parker County and wherever they can bring their drugs and their smuggling and their trafficking. And that's their real goal. Their goal isn't to just cross that border and create havoc in the Rio Grande Valley. Their goal is to get into the rest of the state and, frankly, into the rest of the country. We're doing a job for the country, not just for Texas.
And you're paying for it. I remember last time you were in, you mentioned about the Houston teenagers who
Correct.
were instructed by their gangs to execute their cousins and so
Correct.
forth. So congratulations on that effort.
Well, it's a tragic situation, and it is truly dumbfounding to me that this is something that the federal government can't decide to come together and do something, and do more than they presently do, which is not nearly enough.
Well, speaking of coming together, and again, I'm going to be respectful of your time, get you back over to the Capitol for the conference committee. One final question, if I can. There's been a lot of successes this session, the House and the Senate, but particularly the House. Some pro-life, end-of-life wins, transportation issues.
Absolutely.
Talk about one or two of the other highlights that you see really the House has taken the lead in.
I'm so proud of the work of Representative Drew Springer, Representative Tan Parker, and frankly many others. They have brought a great bill that we've passed through the House that gives dignity and respect to end-of-life issues.
Okay.
For families. That's an issue that has really been a challenge in the state for many years now, and it guarantees dignity for families at the point of end-of-life, and that's so very important, and I'm very proud of the work that those two, Representative Springer and Representative Parker, did specifically on that. I single them out just because they've been leading on that issue, but all the Republican members in the House have been a huge part of that. And talk about how successful it is. I think I'm remembering off the top of my head correctly, I think that bill actually passed unanimously out of the House. Many pro-life, Jenny Morrison has done a fantastic job on her pro-life bill that we passed, I think, a week or two ago. So it has been a very successful session on pro-life issues. We've had great success on the issues. You know, one of the bills that I'm actually very proud of that we passed the other day, and it's not one that many people will talk about. I'm proud that Senator Hancock took up the cause in the Senate and just got it passed out of committee, is actually a bill to help crime victims. And we're having what I think is a travesty in this state, where our pardons and parole offset is how long between your parole hearing till your next parole hearing.
Okay.
Well, some of our most egregious offenders are only being put off for 3 years. We've got people in the state penitentiary with 6 life sentences who every 3 years are brought up for parole. Well, Senator Hancock has shown great leadership. I want to thank Senator Whitmire for letting this bill out of his committee to allow that parole set off. Instead of them having the discretion of going anywhere from 1 to 5 years, they now, if we can get this out of the Senate, from 1 to 10 years. And the reason that's significant is that when someone has committed these heinous crimes against your family, you relive it every time you go before that parole board. And so what we're giving the parole board is a better tool to use their discretion to say, I don't believe this person is fit to be put back into society, and therefore I'm going to have them wait 5 years or 6 years or 7 years before we bring them back. Because the reality of it is, someone who murdered 27 young boys, we're never going to parole. We shouldn't. So why do we bring the victims of those young boys back before that hearing every 3 years? We have a family who in 40 years has been before the parole board 41 times because there were 3 perpetrators of these heinous crimes. Why we would do that to victims in Texas is embarrassing and unexplainable. But I'm incredibly proud of the step forward that we've made and the tool we've now given our Board of Pardons and Parole to let victims in Texas know we do respect them, we always have, but we're going to give them even more of the respect they deserve.
Well, speaking of a step forward, we're going to let you take one back toward the Capitol and wrap this up. State Representative Dennis Bonnen, chairman of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, and a key mover in some of the critical conservative issues this session. Representative, we appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for inviting me, Jim. I enjoyed it.
Folks, remember to tune in for future editions of Texas Insider TV. This has been sponsored by the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. Remember, you're either an insider or you're not, and thanks to Dennis Bonnen for coming in to visit with us today. I'm Jim Cardle.